Okay, we are live. I tried to go live yesterday. Greetings and welcome to those who just joined us, who will join us. I was out of it yesterday too, peoples. I have some noteworthies to do. They're piling up on the back end, but it's all good. I wanted to get this one in, taking a moment to talk about seeking sister wives and some of the things that we can glean from watching these shows. I think I shared to the fullest that I felt led to about specifically about the Dimitri and Ashley Snowden situation. Hopefully that has been helpful. I know a lot of people are talking. Well, the people who watch the show are talking, and hopefully this can add to our understanding. The things that I was able to. Yeah, I could tell when I'm tired because I'll be dragging a little bit, but what was I going to say? Oh, submissive to a fault. That's the name of this here conversation. It's going to be short and sweet, hopefully, right? Submissive to a fault. Watching the latest episodes of Seeking Sister Wives, and the rain is coming down, reminds me of some of the reasons why I tend to have pause for the cause, or pause or cause for concern with certain type of, not just only polygyny, just relationships in general, where you have to yield. Rain is coming down. Where you have to yield your understanding, you have to yield your will fully to mankind, not just men. It can be applicable to women as well, but to mankind who is not infallible, mankind who makes errors, mankind who does misjudgment, right? And as soon as I start talking, all the rain start coming. But any relationships that has to do with man, humanity, where they're requiring you to yield a certain degree, this person, this entity has become your power. They've become your God. You can disagree. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. If you could hear me, hopefully you can hear me because I already started talking. But that person now becomes your power. Now, if you follow biblical principles, it says, have no other power before me. That's what the Creator puts in the commandments, right? Which is, do not put anybody, do not put any entity, do not put any thought before the Creator, which is who governs. The rain is coming down, boy. Who governs all of creation. So in these relationships, any relationship, but in this case, man and woman relationship, rain is coming down. In this man and woman relationship, when it is required of you, when you are belittled, when you are cajoled, when you are, hey, Sandy, when you are manipulated into thinking for yourself, or having critical thinking, or having your own mind is wrong. That's a warning sign, right? Because the person basically is bypassing. First of all, they're even children have internal instinct, and even children have discernment, right? And I'm gonna do it from children, and we're gonna go up. And sometimes they cannot find the words to verbalize, right? And children are under their parents, they're under the adult, but they can't find the words to verbalize why something feels wrong to them. And if the parent or the caretaker is not in tune with that child, they can bypass that child's natural discernment of why they may not like a person, why they don't want to go to a place, right? And that child is expected to totally submit to that parent. And then when hurt comes, or harm comes, or danger comes, because they're not tuned in, you hear, oh, I did what I thought was best. Oh, I didn't know that happened to you, right? So that's submission to a fault. Even children, I'm around children, if they will start pulling back to indicate to you, it's either that's their ego, or that there's some danger that you are not aware of because you may be consumed with other things. How much so in these interpersonal relationships, right? Where, or this intimate setting where, especially in the case of seeking sister wives or patriarchy, is where the man is saying, the masculine is saying, oh, I'm going to override your common sense. I'm going to override your intuition. I'm going to override your programming. And you have to fully and totally commit to me. Because if you don't, that means you're wicked, or you're evil, or you're not of God, right? This is the mind game that people play. Let me bring it back to seeking sister wives. We can see it because that's like theory, like Amuna, yeah, I can see it, but not really. In this show, we are seeing now, Hopefully I'm not yelling because the rain sounds like it's coming down loud. We are seeing what it looks like and feels like to have someone's system, a grown adult system, their thought process overridden by whatever the manipulative tool or tactic the overrider is using to hack the system. Right? So in Garrick's case, in Garrick's and Daniel's situation, Garrick comes up with this harebrained scheme. I'm convinced Garrick is the one who has come up with this harebrained scheme. And he convinces Danielle that it's God. God wants you to get Sister Danielle. So Danielle is fighting and she's struggling with this idea. Like, nah, I don't think so. I'm not really feeling this. And eventually, after much, people say that a wife is like a continual dripping, but the husband who continues to nag and nag anyone, eventually you'll be like, you know what? I'm going to follow you. So you let them hack your system. Eventually, she agrees. We know that it was under duress. Rain is coming in. We know that it's under duress. We know that she is stressed. We know that she's gone into depression, according to what they've shared, right? And it has caused great angst for her, great issues for her, right? I should have brought the key. So I'm thinking of whether I should run for the key because I can't have the door closed too long. So basically, Danielle is submitting because she feels as though submitting wholly to Garrick means that she is in right standing with God, right? We see where they're going wrong. First, he convinced her to do it. Then he convinced her to go to Mexico. And now he's convincing her and the family to return to Mexico, right? Each time he's doing it, if it doesn't go his way, he keeps removing more and more barriers that would indicate it was God who was doing this, right? So he removes the barrier of them not having the visa paper. It doesn't matter. I can't wait. You know, we don't have the visa. Let's do it. Then they remove the barrier of wanting to get married first, right? Oh, because now it's her eggs. Because this is the ego. This is how we know Garrick is operating in the ego. So now that he's not able to get what he wants, you see him pushing the boundary. And I spoke about this before, more and more and more. And because Danielle has resolved herself to submitting to her husband wholly, bypassing her intuition because it's evil, because, you know, God, please help her to get over her jealousy. Now she, the children, and her parents are going down. Listen to how, if we don't, you know, pay attention, you get Jim Jones. If you don't pay attention, you'll be going to drink the Kool-Aid. Is Danielle, Garrick, the children, and his in-laws are going to go to Mexico to help him facilitate, make it easier for him to impregnate a woman who he's not married to, who is not a native English speaker, who doesn't even live in the country. This is what total submission looks like if you do not retain the right to say, hey, if you're going off track, I retain the right to not go and follow along with you. All along having people to believe that it's God. I forgot what I named this, but what did I name this again? I'm talking basically, I'm talking about the issues with total submission and how we have to be careful about it because it can lead people into trouble. Let me see the definition. Submission, the fact of accepting or yielding to a superior force or to the will or authority of another person. Yeah, the in-laws too. This episode that we just missed, the in-laws now are also on the deal. They are in tow. Mama and Papa, mommy and daddy are in tow to go to Mexico with the two children for daddy to impregnate the Brazilian girl in Mexico with no visa. And all along, even though, okay, let me just put that there. I'll put that there for a minute. Now, to show you that Garrick is fully in his ego, right? He's fully in his lower man. Welcome to the conversation. Garrick goes to their 13th anniversary. I wish I could, wait. I tried to show it the last time and they flagged me. Sorry, Garrick goes to his 13th anniversary with his wife, big wife, of 13 years. And all he can talk about is, let's take a picture for sister. Oh, I'm worried about sister. He made their entire anniversary dinner about another woman. These are all very red flags. I mean, crimson red flags, very red flags flying in the air over Daniel's head. But because she's fully submitted to the husband, and because she has overridden her own intuition, and because she wants to be pleasing to him, even though it's clear to everybody who's watching that he wants to be pleasing to himself, she's going ahead with this. Exactly. I have all these moments here. So the whole time they're at dinner, chopping it up about sister and how he wants to go impregnate her. So Daniel raises her concern because her sister-in-law is like, yo, Danielle, I think this is a bad look. And so Daniel raises her concern and he flags her off. What does she have? I said this earlier, weeks ago. She already got convinced to divorce the man on paper. She's already convinced that God wants him to go down to Mexico to meet up with this woman. And now he has her convinced that Roberta's eggs are not going to make it to the end of quarantine. And he needs to bring the entire family on this impregnation mission. Okay, so that's what full submission looks like if you override your thoughts, your intuition, and your senses. Let's go towards Ashley now, where if we step back from the conversation, for those who just joined us, we're talking about submission, but we're also talking about it in the context of sister wife. I look at how people respond to Dimitri, and even myself, when I look back at some of the videos that I've made, and how we respond to Ashley, and the responsibility that we put on Dimitri, and the responsibility that we put on Ashley, and the accountability that goes to Dimitri, and the accountability that goes to Ashley. And I have to sit back even as we're doing this accountability study, and we'll come back and do the responsible one. And we're listening to the accounts of what both people had the idea, right? One person had the idea, they sold the other person on the idea. So Dimitri had this idea, according to him, he didn't know how to put it into words. Ashley had the words to understand what he was referring to, and she has become his accomplice. She has become his aide. She has become his enabler. So then we can sit back and say, well, who's worse? When someone is committed a crime, if you're in the car while the person is committing the crime, you become an accomplice. Yeah? Because even though it wasn't your original idea to commit the crime, you were there when the crime was committed. So when we're looking at the full submission of Ashley in this particular episode, encouraging him, picking his clothes out for the dinner, encouraging him that this is once again going to be like their umpteenth forever wife, involving the children to decorate the backyard for this official proposal. All the while she's burning on the inside. You could see it by the way she pulls the bottom lip up to the top. She's burning on the inside. It's clear that she's burning on the inside, right? That she's going to be the official, on paper, Mrs. Snowden, right? But he has convinced her somewhere along the way in their conversation, and she sees value in being submitted, wholly submitted to his vision. While, because he doesn't have that balance I often talk about with the male and female, they're not equals, but they're supposed to balance each other. And when the female is deactivated, she can't do her job. Ashley and Danielle are two perfect examples of what happens when the female is activated and deactivated. They will go along and support the male in whatever thought he has, even if it's to his own detriment, to her detriment, and to the detriment of the family. Now, when we're looking back, on one hand, we say, yes, submission, that's the way it's supposed to go. And on the other hand, when it all goes wrong, we say, where was his wife? What were they doing? What was she thinking? She was doing what society thought she should have done, be wholly submitted to the husband. It stopped raining now. Even though the husband is clearly following his lower nature, his lower man, he's following his ego into the pits of wherever he's going to be exploring this. And if you don't agree, feel free to share. But this is an observable thing that we can watch. So where does it, in your own lives, in my own life, where does it stop? Where do you draw the line? Right? This is where we have this ride or die thought process, or this ride or die trope, is that no, Bonnie and Clyde. By the way, I don't know if you ever looked up that Bonnie and Clyde. Did you know that Bonnie was married? in that Bonnie and Clyde story, and Clyde came out of jail. It was crazy. It's somewhere here on YouTube. That Bonnie and Clyde story is real sus. But there has to be, if you are submissive to a fault, then you are now an accomplice. You are now an enabler who aids the person in their own destruction. We have examples like Tina Turner and Ike. Ike is the one who's driving the ship. He's using Tina's energy, her resources, her efforts, right, to do this Ike and Tina Turner. He's abusing her. He's doing whatever he's doing, and she is still showing up and still being supportive. It's not until she comes to herself to say, well, this is destructive. This is not a good look. I need to stop what it is that I'm doing. Does anything change? So this thought process of sex, sandwich, and silence, the man, that conversation, what it's ultimately doing to the broader community, Black, white, Chinese, Indian, it doesn't matter. What it's doing is oftentimes the masculine principle, in my observation, elevates himself to the status of a god. Y'all could tell me if I'm wrong on this one. Elevates himself to the status of a god. And I'm going to tell you why I say that. I'm going to pause. I'm going to come and show you guys at another time. But for some reason, when I'm on the phone, I can't screen share. There was a couple of months ago on my Facebook, I wrote a simple statement. It said, you are not her God. Let me see if I can get what it said. I think it said, you are not her God, right? And would you believe how upset the males were? I'm going to come back and show you guys. I don't know how to log in off of this. They were upset. And I was confused because it was a clear-cut statement, but yet still the males were very upset. And at that moment, y'all know me, if you know me by now, I got to thinking. I was like, well, this is peculiar. What about this statement would make the men so upset? Hold on, I'm gonna see if I could get it on this. I hardly use this thing, but I'm gonna see if I could get it on here. So my theory, because I'm always formulating theories based on real life data, is that somewhere along the line, the male has come to think that he is a god for her. And in doing so, he can tinker with and redesign her purpose. Because remember, if we are subscribing to any, y'all know I don't know my thing off my head. If we are subscribing to any ideology or a biblical narrative, then the man did not create the woman. But in a lot of the contention, from what I'm observing, is the thought process that the man can redesign the woman for his purposes, not for what she has been made for, but for what he feels that will suit him best. So in order to do that, you got to be the creator a little bit. In order for me to redesign the Benz, right, and then put Benz on it, still put the name on it, I have to take the position as though I'm the creator or the designer or the engineer of this vehicle or the Benz vehicle. So to a certain degree, the man wants to go in there and say, this is what I want, sex, silence, and sandwiches. Never mind what she was created to be. And in so doing, he deactivates her defenses. He deactivates the ability for her to help him balance off. I want to get that one. Or maybe I'll have to come back and do that another time. I'm going to come back and do that another time when I'm on the other computer, so you guys can see the reaction that I got from males when I said, dear men, you are not her God. That's what I said. Dear men, you are not her God. How did that become a controversial statement? Right? So I like to get to the crux and to the core. So back to Danielle and Ashley. My thought is, in their full submission to their husbands, they stepped out of their purpose, their authentic purpose, and into the space of a level of man worship. Just a level of it, just a titch of it. That means what the man says you're going to go with, even if it's to your own detriment, even if it's to your own harm, even if because you're supposed to be protecting, making sure the inside of the family is protected and covered, but you're too busy trying to appease the man that you can't do that. You can't do that. So when we can look in retrospect and be like, Ashley is the one who was out front, giving these women a face to make them think it was okay. She was the bait. She was the one who was, that Dimitri was using to lure these women in. So to a certain degree, we have to put some of the onus on her. To a certain degree, we have to put some of the onus on Danielle. We have to put some of the onus on Tasha, because once you come into agreement, even if I didn't come up with the master plan like Pinky in the Brain, once you come into agreement with the plan, you are now accountable and responsible for what happens. And your portion will be meted out onto you. So we see it in the Jim Jones situation. Jim Jones tapped into a need, a deficit, right? Let me know if you guys can still hear me. Jim Jones was able to tap into the person that felt dejected, the person that felt unloved, right? And he supplied what he felt was what they needed. He knew how to appeal to poor people and people in need and downtrodden people. So when he's in this space and appealing to them and recreating this family and this joy, he had to have other people who were willing to be complicit. Other people they said, according to, of course, I watch a lot of documentaries, but according to a lot of the testimonies, he used to, the inner workings, the inner circle, he would beat those people and chastise those people and do the things behind the scene that we hear about, such and such and such and such. But those were the people who would be out in the community bringing back more people, more sheep to the slaughter, until eventually he convinced them that, hey, we got to get out of here totally, right? We have to get out of here totally. And the way he did it, if you look at manipulation and mind control and people, how they build this, they love bomb you. They appeal to whatever needs you may have, whatever emotional vulnerability you may have, and then they make their way in. In Jim Jones' compound, it was only, they said that there was a loudspeaker that had a tape playing of his voice continually to program the mind over and over and over and over and over again. So that if you even had an opportunity to have your own thought, it will be knocked out by the programming, right? That's how you call brainwashing. So don't think that doesn't happen in family settings where one or the other wants to achieve something and your programming may start slipping. Sister, remember, sister, got that Joel Osteen voice going on. Sister, this is what God wants for us, sister. You know, I'm so thankful that God brought sister into our lives. He will do whatever it takes. Like if you call homegirl sister one more time, if you call homegirl sister one more time, yo, that Joel Osteen voice be getting me all day. He's like, yeah, I feel so bad. He even almost started crying at their dinner over sister. So I'm not sure. I know we're watching it a year. The year has passed, so we don't know what's happening. I don't know what's happening with them in this space and time. But I think a good takeaway is looking at how healthy submission gets to where things become very unhealthy. For those who just joined us, I was just going over when you're submissive to a fault. I was just going over my thoughts on the latest episode of Seeking Sister Wives and how it is that we can look in our lives and realize when we're almost at the cliff, you know, the lemons that follow all the other lemons off the cliff. And here's another thing that in life experience has taught me about when you want to please the creator, but you're doing it through humanity, through man. If they're using God to lead you in a certain direction, here's where the issue comes in. When you follow them and you get into a compromising position and you get to where they didn't promise, right? They promise you pixie dust and roses and you in a compromising position, you often hear things like, I didn't tell you to do that. All of a sudden the person starts backtracking. You did that because you wanted to do that, right? Which will anger and infuriate you more because you trusted this person. This is why a lot of people are church hurt, religion hurt, family hurt, because the people who you are submitting to, the people who you're trusting in, right? You expect that they have your best interest at heart. And as you go along and realize that they don't, if anybody wants to come up and share, feel free to do so. Let me check and see if anybody's. behind the thing. If they don't, you get upset, you get hurt, and then you project that on all religion or all churches or all Knessets or all people. Also, I'm seeing this in male and female relationships. So you wholly submit to the male and you wholly trust in the male, or vice versa, you wholly trust in the female. And this female does you wrong. This male does you wrong. But instead of saying this male or this female, you say all. Right? Like in the thing we just watched for the Amos and Andy, right? She's like, this happened to me 3 times. So now I'm going to cast a wide net and say all people or all men are X, Y, and Z. And that's also error. That's also errant thinking, because that also cuts us off from having better experiences when we choose to make better choices. Right? So that's my thoughts on that. Let's see who else I'm missing. What's their name? The next Vanessa and Jared. I haven't done too much research on them. I'm feeling like I don't really want to. Yeah, because what I would say is when Homeboy said he was gonna almost start crying and giving up on polygyny because it was too hard to seek the sister wife, and he almost got that Garrick tear in his eye. I was like, bruh, for real, the Garrick tear. He was getting misty-eyed, and he was all like his child bust in the room. And I'm like, what are you doing? All this energy that you're putting to finding whoever you're looking for, the people who you need at this time are right in front of you. Your wife, your 4 children, not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 children are in need of your energy and your attention. And you're exerting a lot of these families, even Sidian. You don't even see the children anymore. You see, him pursuing all of these things when the reality is cultivate what's right in front of you. But oftentimes, we the people, what's over yonder is always more alluring. I mean, it's always more desirable than what we have in front of us. So part of that is us learning to be content, right? Learning to be not happy, but basically content with what it is and continue to cultivate that before we stretch for other things that's going to make it all come apart. I'll say this. Sunday, I was at, I went to go sell. That's why I was all tired, right? I went to go vend, and 2 elders. And when I mean elders, I mean elders. They're old. I mean, gray hair, gray beard, old. They start talking in front of me, in front of the table, and they're talking to another elder about how they want her to be a second wife. I was like, did this conversation just drop in my lap? Like, what is this, right? So I'm over here eavesdropping, but not really. So they're talking, and she's kind of contending with them, like, why do you need one? Why do you want one, right? So I'm laughing inside, but trying not to, tip them off to, So she says, Amuna, can you talk to them, please? And I was like, ooh, invited to the conversation. So for me, they would be elders. They would be like my parents' age, but they invited me to the conversation. So I was like, why? This is my perfect opportunity. Why do you need more wives? I'm like looking at you. You're like, you are old. Well, because, they're Jamaican, because they would, if one is not in the mood, then the other one would be in the mood. I'm like, in the mood for what? If you were to have children right now in your 60s, almost 70s, how would you take care? So I asked them, if something was to happen to you and you took these 2 women and these 2 families, then they both, instead of one person having no husband and 2 people is not having no husband. But the same arguments that we hear in the younger men is the same argument. Well, I want to be there for them. I want to comfort them. I was like, bruh, can we stop it with the AARP card? What are we saying? So I eventually said to them, you know what? To me, in my observation, they tried to pitch it to me. They tried to spin it around, but it's nothing I've never heard before. I just think it was even more comical because they were elders, they didn't even half believe some of the stuff they were saying. So eventually I said, you know what? It seems to me that this is a fantasy that males old and young have. And if we can approach it as, it's like, I always wanted to parasail. You know what I mean? I always wanted to hang glide. I always wanted to do some spectacular feat. if we can be honest about, it's a bucket list moment for many people, because these elders could never be serious. I'm like, you're going to have two women. It's going to be the CNA and the nurse who's going to be coming to visit you. That's the two women you're going to be having. Because how are you going to meet the needs of, in your late 60s, early 70s, of these two women? Like, come on. And that's the conversation. And the other woman who was there, she was just like, tell them. I'm like, yo, this is funny. That tickled me. I ain't gonna front. But I say that to say it's the same talking points, and maybe we're looking at it differently, or maybe it's just a bucket list item for many people. There's no way, I want to go to the top of Mount Everest. I want to hand glide. I want to, swim up the Nile. And, oh yeah, this sounds interesting. You want two women. Would I be a sister wife? No, that's not my groove. I can tell you why. That's not my groove. For those who may be wondering. My thing on the conversation is education. And really why I say education is because I've seen a lot of miseducation over a long time, right? I'm not going to jump into other people's thing and tell them what to do. My thing is open your eyes, right? Don't be manipulated. Don't be lied to. Don't be guilted into. If that's what you want to do, there's some women, and I have a theory, and some women have gotten upset with me, but there's some women in the world. There's different types of mentality of women. There's some women who in the world, or they may not be conscious, they may not be woke, and they already are complacent with being with somebody else's husband or somebody else's man. And they had no problem with it being in the world. They had no problem with it. So you have that mentality that will cross over into consciousness, and the people will say, no, she's more righteous. She already had that mentality. That's already who she was. And then you have other people who may be more loyal and committed, and they expect loyalty and commitment back. That was then them there, and that's them here, right? So people come into consciousness and pretend that your willingness to do something means you're even more righteous, when no, some men in the world were already traipsing up and down, were already to a certain degree hopping from woman to woman. So they come into consciousness and they say, oh, there's a way I can do it and it's more respectable. There's a way I can do it and my name won't be stained. It's the same people. They just changed garbs, or they just changed clothes, or they just changed their head, whatever. And so you see it in all religions, or many. You see it in different walks of life, because this is already who that person was. So hopefully that answered the question. Any more questions or comments? If you want to come on, boy, you see when it gets summertime in Florida? After the rain, the sun come out and it makes it humid. So yeah, that's my thoughts on that. Any more questions or comments? If not, I'm gonna wrap it up. So yeah, this is where we are. They are, it may not end well for some of the people involved. And so, like I said, now you don't have one person without a family or father. You have multiply that by the amount of women you have. Like for instance, in some of these polygynous relationships, if the male dies, even in the case of King David, the male is about to die. They're not over there singing Kumbaya. They're over there singing whose mother and whose child has the right to inheritance. Nathan runs for Bathsheba and comes to David and say, hey, remember you promised me and my son X, Y, and Z. People are not looking at the reality that when this figure that all of these people are connected to perishes, that these people are left. You don't just have one widow, now you have 5 widows. You don't have one widow, now you have 3 widows. You don't just have 4 fatherless children, now you have 10 fatherless children. So you can multiply it on one side, you have to multiply it on the other side. Any more questions? Any more questions or comments at this time? I'm probably going to come and talk about, that's if I'm not tired later. Let me know. I got some suggestions on some topics. If you have any topic suggestions, put it in the box. We're going to come and talk about biblical adultery. I got that suggestion, and the way in which we look at adultery in the culture and what exactly it is according to the text and all of that good stuff. I'm gonna come back and talk some more about welfare, because people are lying on welfare. They're lying on welfare, and then I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna talk about a lot of things. I got a lot of things in my mind, so y'all just bear with me as we go through this process. And if that is it, then I'm gonna go ahead and wrap it up. I want to thank everybody for tuning in, and have a blessed day. And we'll talk again soon. If not tonight, then tomorrow. So hit that notification bell so you know when I go live. All right.